and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. As usual, my name is Rohan and I'm joined with my friend Phil. Hey, Phil.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. And today we have a special guest, Jürgen from Nuki. Hey, Jürgen, how's it going?
Hi.
This episode, as usual, is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabukasa. For a small monthly fee, you'll unlock powerful features like secure, effortless access to your system from anywhere, your choice of voice assistants, offsite backups, and more, all configurable through the UI with no YAML needed. It also supports the development of Home Assistant, ESP Home, and other Open Home Foundation projects. Click on the link in the description to find out more. We'd also like to give a shout out to our Patreon members, including our executive producers, Benny and Rob. You can also help support the show and get early access to episodes all in an ad free feed. To support the show, check out homeassistant.fm and click Patreon in the menu. All right, Jürgen, thank you for joining us. Where, just for our viewers, where are you joining us from today?
I'm sitting in Austria, in Graz, so in the middle of Europe.
That's awesome. And you're from Nuki. Tell us a little bit about what you do there and tell us about kind of the vision behind Nuki and how you got here today.
Yeah. Yeah, how I got here is a funny thing because I got here because I hate keys. Uh,
Who doesn't? Who loves keys? I'd like to know, like in this year, like who loves keys at the moment? I think they are slowly on their way out. Like you've got cars that can now link to your phone. You've got,
Yeah.
yeah, like door locks that you're very familiar with. The key is on the way out, right? All our offices are smart fobs, right?
yeah, but still, if you are out
Yeah.
on the street, 95% of people carry around a piece of metal in their pocket, which
Mm.
Yep.
rubs against their smartphone that has artificial intelligence and everything in there. It's kind of unbelievable. And that's also how we started into it. So about 10 years ago, um, we were sitting together and actually thinking about, this problem. Why do we carry all those pieces of metal around? Why in large corporations you already have NFC cards or other stuff, but why for our
Yeah.
private doors we carry around the keys? That was actually our motivation to start. And then we digged into it and defined a few success criteria for us that we think a product needs to have in order to get rid of it. Then, as we typically are, we built the prototype. I put the prototype on my door and then said, okay, family, what are you doing now with this? And well, it was pretty obvious that almost immediately the key was gone and no one ever asked for a key. Funny thing is, our products are retrofit. So basically the outside of your door remains unchanged. You put it on
Mhm.
the inside, onto the door. You can keep the key, which was an important feature because my wife was the last one to jump ship.
Right.
um, but you can continue to use the key, but you can also use the phone or our app or any integration you have. And actually, what happened pretty quick is kids, of course, wow, Kyle, cool, I don't need this anymore. No keys. And then, of course, I myself as well, and also my wife converted over time because there is a simple trick. You just give her the Nuki app, turn on auto unlock, and then whenever she comes home, the door is already open before she's at the door. And that actually does the trick because you don't need a key for that. And then there is also a funny thing, which I would have never thought of, but when you leave your house, you also have to put in the key in order to lock it.
Yeah.
And that's a
Mm.
very annoying thing. Yeah? Once you know that you can get rid of it. So we also have features in there that lock your door, either automatically or when you leave, or just a handy thing. All our products have a button, and if you double press the button, the door just locks when you close it. So you just walk
Nice.
out, double press and then close the door and it locks. And
That's cool.
those are such small things that really make a big difference because everyone turning
Yeah.
around, taking out the key, putting it in, locking, just for walking away, it's a useless process. So you immediately feel it makes your life easier. And that's what we immediately felt with our prototypes. And then we went on to Kickstarter and tried to see if other people would be willing to pay for our product as well. And it became eventually in 2016 or 2015 the most successful Kickstarter campaign in the German-speaking area. And then once we said, okay, Kickstarter, on Kickstarter people like it, there seems to be a market out there. Let's go for it. let's produce it, let's bring it to market, and that's how our journey basically started.
That's very cool. So in now, I mean, from a Nuki lock perspective, that was obviously you're in Austria, so there's different standards for locks and all those things. So that means you were focused on European style locks. Is that correct?
Yes, that was one specific thing, of course, that in Europe you have to turn the key 720 degrees. So it's not like on a US deadbolt where you just have a 120 degrees rotation. It's really 720, which of course means it turns much longer. It needs more force because we have lots of multi-point locks. We also have latches that you need to redirect with the key. Those are things you don't have in other markets, and that makes it a little bit specific. And the interesting thing is that even though you have to turn it 720 degrees, the patience you have in order to wait for the key to turn is the same than with a deadbolt. So you want to have it at the same speed because it's the same human beings, you know? So when you're waiting in front of your door, you just expect that it goes at the same speed than it would go with a deadbolt. And that is something that we already achieved with our old products because the products in the beginning, they took about 4 or 5 seconds for the 720 degrees. If you would take a classic deadbolt lock, it would take around 10 seconds, which is just too long. And now we have a new product generation, and the new product generation that does away with that is much, much faster. It does it in a second, even on European style doors. So it's super fast.
How is that? Is it just more force or faster or both or what how do you achieve that?
Well, first off, it's faster and it has the same force than the old one had. So essentially, of course, the gearing is a different one and the motor is stronger. And the cool thing with our new product is, and I've never seen something like that in the market, the lock itself is the motor. So it basically is a brushless motor that is built into the lock. It's not like you purchase, typically when you build such a product, you purchase a motor somewhere and plug the motor in it, and then you have some gears. Our product is the motor itself. If
Hmm.
you don't know if you know how a brushless motor works, so basically you have magnets and you have a rotating
Yeah.
magnetic field, and that rotating magnetic field makes the magnet follow it. That's how all the motors in cars work, in electric cars.
Right.
And we basically built the same into the lock, and the lock itself, the parts that turn in the lock, they are the motor. That's why
Interesting.
everything is one combined thing, so the battery is, you could say the battery is part of the motor because it's in the middle of the motor. The lock itself, I have it here, it's such a, this round shaped thing, and basically also the magnets go around like this here. And the battery is right in it, and the PCB and everything is basically, it's just one motor, which is super cool design thing. And of course, it doesn't have any wear because brushless motors don't wear. There are no
Right.
brushes that can wear.
Then in your testing, like I'm guessing you've done a whole bunch of testing, have you been able to then theorize how many turns this lock could do? Like, have you ever been able to reach a limit?
You mean in terms of until it breaks?
Yeah, like have you been like how like for example an LED company can say, oh yeah, our LEDs will last 25 years, right? Even though the
Yeah.
technology hasn't been out for 25 years. Have you been able to theorize, okay, we suspect this lock on a daily use will be able to last X amount of years or X amount of locks and unlocks?
Well, in terms of locks and unlocks, we don't have a limit because it's basically the motor is the only thing that has a wear, and the motor doesn't break because brushes don't break.
Yep.
Then, of course, we have, and that's also a specific thing, we have, because of the small size of the new product, it does have a built-in battery, and you can recharge it with a magnetic charging cable. So it has kind of, I'm not allowed to name it MagSafe because that's that's something that is protected, yeah. But it works the same way. So you just plug a charging cable in there, and you can charge it on your door in 2 hours. And because of that, of course, there's a built-in battery, and the battery has some wear. So typically, such lithium batteries, they last for about 10 years, and
Okay. Great.
and that's probably also where you would expect that you need to exchange the battery, which is something we can do. Then again, if you think 10 years into the future, well, we'll see how locks in 10 years look like. Because there might be
Yeah.
new standards out there, new electronics, new fancy features. So I'm not sure if in 10 years you still want to have this product or you jump onto a next generation that's already out there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point, right? Like smart homes in general, right? There's technology moving, evolving. I mean, the Matter standard is still in its very early days. Who's to know what in 10 years' time if that standard is going to be there or what it will look like, right? And you may need
Yeah.
some new hardware.
It's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why we also think that retrofit is a good solution, because a
Mhm.
retrofit lock you can change. If it's built directly into your door, you would have to change the full door.
Right. Which makes that doing it this way makes a lot more sense. And now this new model with the shape and everything that you were saying, so it looks like that will fit on American doors or North American doors rather.
Yes, it does. Actually, this is even a door with a deadbolt. And you can say it does just a 120 degrees, and this is it. And of course, it does that quite fast. So it's a little bit below 1 second. But the funny thing is the speed we use over here is the slowest speed setting that we offer in Europe. In Europe we have speed settings, so we call them. There is standard mode, and in standard mode it locks in about 1.5 seconds. You can run it in gentle mode. That's during night times it's slower. It's a little bit less loud. And we also have insane speed mode. And in insane mode, it does the whole thing in 1 second in Europe. And then, of course, because of the 720 degrees and 120 only on deadbolts, it's much slower. But still, it's the same time because this is the time that feels good. So something between 0.5 and 1 second is what feels good. If it's faster, it feels a little bit rushed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's so how did you like when you say it feels rushed? Like what do you mean? Like it's too fast.
Well, if you would do it in insane mode, in the US, it locks in
Yeah.
0.2 seconds. So you
Wow.
basically, you click on the button and you hear, and this is it.
That's awesome.
And that feels, it just doesn't feel okay. So we made it a little bit slower. And of course, that's the funny thing. It's also part of our philosophy. It's software. Software
Yeah.
controls it, which means we can work with software updates to change that in time. So if now,
Yeah.
say, the US customers say they want to have it faster, okay, we can make it faster with just a software update. Or we can even introduce speed modes like we have over here in Europe. Those are possibilities that we want to have and that we actively use, because from our philosophy point of view, we see ourselves more as a software company. We don't see us as a hardware company. The hardware is the enabler, but we are not proud because we have invented a motor that turns a key. That's not. We are proud that we have a cool hardware and that it looks cool, but in reality, it's an enabler for a use case, and we want to give you the best use case, and that also includes software, the software that runs on the device, but also the front ends you use, the APIs and interfaces and all of that. And because of being a software company, we of course, or seeing ourselves like that, we like to work on the software side. So once you purchase that, it doesn't mean that the feature set and everything remains the same forever. We do quarterly, almost quarterly, firmware updates. That could be, of course, improvements and bug fixes, but could also be new features.
So what would you be then looking at expanding your software or tech side then to potentially other locks?
That is actually a possibility that we use our tech stack and put it on top of other hardware.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's fantastic. And I guess that also goes with the whole open source movement, right? Like, yes, I have this lock, but just because it's from this brand doesn't necessarily mean I want to use their software. Maybe they've got like a buggy app or something, or they've gone out of business, right? It would be cool if someone could make a firmware update available, and then I could put Nuki on it, and then I would then have access to whatever hardware supported features Nuki has, and have that go into the Nuki ecosystem.
Yeah, it's not so easy because, of course, our ecosystem is also tailored to the features of our hardware.
Of
But
course.
in theory, of course, we are open to such a model. Currently, we don't have it. What we have is we have some products that just trigger simple functions. So, for example, if you have a gate at home, you can mount something from us. It's called the opener to it, which just enables the relay. And through the relay, of course, it brings it basically into our ecosystem. You can use our APIs and all of our integrations, but you have a different hardware. But the interface is quite, I don't want to say a stupid one. It's just shortening a contact.
Yeah, and that would allow you to
Right.
do like if you've got a garage door that has like
Yeah.
that you can short a circuit on to trigger the garage door,
Yeah.
you could then have that brought into the Nuki app.
So talking about the software stack, I mean, you guys have just achieved the, the coveted works with Home Assistant badge. So, what was the reason that you guys went down that road, but also what was the reason you guys got greenlit and validated and all of that stuff, right? Like so does it have to do with your I'm assuming it's more around the software stack on your side, right? And what do you guys what was that whole process like?
Well, the reasoning for doing it is because we believe that consumers, well, we know they know brands, and
Hmm.
they shouldn't have to worry too much about standards. So I don't know if it's relevant for a consumer that he knows what Fred is,
Mm,
and maybe even not knowing what Matter is, but they should know actually what Home Assistant is, because that's what they have at home, and they want to know what works with
Sure.
Home Assistant. And that's why we like the brains more than the technical API spec names behind. It's also like, do I have Wi-Fi 6, 4, 5, 3? Many people are
yeah, right.
confused by this. And in reality, I often get asked, which Wi-Fi standard does your lock have? But in reality, it's irrelevant. As long as it works, you don't need to care about the number behind its Wi-Fi. It works. And the same is here. It just works with Home Assistant. That's important for us. And what's also important, that we have a certain quality in our products. And typically for these works with programs, you define certain quality criteria that you want to see, that you think makes sense for your product. And then we are always proud when our products also match that, because typically we should have the same expectation. We all want to make the consumer happy, and we want to offer something that is made for the consumer. So for us, going through the program was quite easy.
Yeah.
The only remark, and that's one we often get, is why do you need our app to install it? And the reason for this is that our app actually guides you through the installation process also. So when we created the product, one of the winning success factors that we defined is that you can install it in 5 minutes without the need for any tools and a written installation.
Okay.
Because, when we started out, there were already products on the market that somehow were a motor to turn the key. We didn't invent the motor to turn the key. But when you unpack them, there was a written manual with 30 pages, and it started out with, you need a hammer, a saw, and a screwdriver. And we said, okay, no, it's my home door. It's a product category I don't know. I don't maybe even trust yet. No saw on my home door. That's not how I started out with smart home. That's not smart at all. And also no written manual with 30 pages. No, it's
Mm,
a no-go. For us, it was clear, scan a QR code and go through an app-guided process that makes all of this simple to you. And of course, if we would immediately connect our product to a third-party platform, and we are not in control of this manual installation and setup process, we would leave that. That's why you need to download our app. The cool thing is that we do not require you to set up any account. So you just download the app, connect it to your log, install it, and once you are through it, you activate Matter in your case, then connect it via Matter to, say, Home Assistant, and then you're good to go with the Home Assistant app as well. So we think it's a hurdle that's worthwhile right now for people to let them through. Maybe in the future we can get rid of it, but for now it's for sure the best way. And I'd like to more work on features that are in Home Assistant and help you to connect your log or control it while you use it, rather than just the one-time setup. Because the one-time setup is done by an administrator just once. Afterwards, it's used by many people for 10 years or whatever. And as long as you work on improving features, improving Matter, bringing things in there, I think it makes more sense to work on the usage side of things rather than just on the setup side of things.
Now, you guys are Matter over Thread certified, right? So that's pretty exciting. What was that like? Basically, get Matter into the product, right? And what are your thoughts on Matter? Clearly, you like it because you guys use it, but what's your why Matter essentially, right?
Well, before Matter, our older logs from 2018 onwards had HomeKey, and they had HomeKey via Bluetooth. And now we have Matter via Thread. And those are already the two analogies I always like to use, because basically Matter is HomeKey for everyone. So it's a pretty open standard that changes and is evolvable, and you can also engage yourself in there, which we did. So some features of the log cluster in Matter are also coming from us, and we brought them into the standard.
Nice.
And on the other hand, it's a common thing that is used by many companies and sets a certain layer. And you have the strongest companies behind. So you have Apple, Google, Samsung, all those big ones behind.
Yeah,
And that helps a lot because before, to be honest, having HomeKit in there was quite an effort. Doing the same with a different standard for Google and everyone, that would have just blown up the firmware to a degree that it just doesn't fit on the chip. Now we have one stack that is quite big and complicated because Matter is quite a beast
yeah,
for many of the small chips. But it's one common thing. That's a cool thing. And then the evolution from Bluetooth over to Thread is also one we're
yeah,
very happy with because Thread is IP based. It's a mesh network. You can easily extend it. You can improve it. Bluetooth is none of that. It's
yeah,
direct. It's within 10 meters of reach. It has its backsides. So Thread is definitely much more modern. And it's also made for a product like ours, which are battery driven. That's a
right,
cool thing. So now one of the questions was, how was it to implement Meta and Thread? And when we
yeah,
started out relatively early, so there were no other Meta and Thread products on the market. And initially, it was really, really, really a mess to get that into your product.
right,
Now it's becoming much better because many of the chip manufacturers already have their SDKs, and also Matter has matured. So many of the bugs that were in the initial Matter implementations aren't there anymore. In the past there were lots of problems with pairing and initial setup. All of that is gone, and also Thread becomes more and more stable and better. And one of the biggest challenges for us when we implemented it is that from our philosophy, we basically want to give consumers the option. So we want to give them the option which app or front end or integration they want to use. And we never wanted to build a product that just works with one. So where you have to say at the setup time, I use my product with Matter and this is it. With our product, you can use every API in parallel. So the lock on my home door, our Nuki lock, for example, I can use the Nuki app. I can use the Nuki keypad, which works via Bluetooth. I have a door sensor from Nuki, which also works via Bluetooth. It is connected via Meta over Thread to my Apple Home. I have an MQTT connection running the Home Assistant, and
Nice.
all of that in
uh,
parallel. And the coolest thing, the lock itself, it has Wi-Fi and Thread built in, but it noticed that through the Apple HomePod Mini that I have, it gets also internet access. So it turned off Wi-Fi in order to save battery. So now,
Oh, now that's smart.
last
interesting.
time I charged it, I think it was in November, and now it's already June. So it's almost 9 months on a single battery charge on a European door with multi-point lock. And it has, it's integrated into 3 or 4 systems, and everything runs in parallel. So I have free choice which interface I want to use.
That's
And that's the
impressive.
cool stuff. It's not. That's the software stack that makes the magic, right? We're not saying,
Hmm.
this is a metal lock and that's why you connect it to Home Assistant. This is it. This is the only thing. Huh? You
Yeah,
can use
yeah,
all of the
yeah.
integrations in parallel and sort it out the way you want to have it. You can have it
And
integrated in Home Assistant and in all your routines. At the same time, you can use the auto unlock function of the Nuki app. There is no restriction. You can use our keypad. You can use our fingerprint reader in the keypad, and you can trigger automations based on which key was put on the keypad in Home Assistant. So you can play a welcome melody for your girlfriend when she comes home, while you can have a different scene based on your own finger when you place it.
That's cool.
that's very neat.
Yeah, I remember like the old any Bluetooth device, right? This is my concern with the Bluetooth thing when it came out, is that you could only pair or you could only have one active Bluetooth connection at a time, right? Now with headphones and all that, it's a bit different. There's new standards. But yeah, back in the day, it was you could only pair one Bluetooth device with one controller, right? So as soon as you connected something to Bluetooth, that was it. You couldn't control it any other way. That was it with Bluetooth. And I guess that even my own lock, right? Like I've got to choose which protocol I want to use. Do I want to use Z-Wave? Do I want to use Zigbee? Do I want to use Wi-Fi? Once I've chosen that, that's it. There is no, use both at the same time. It's you choose one, that's it. So that is fantastic that you're able to use all of them at the same time.
Yeah, even the lock, it can run everything. It can run Bluetooth, Thread, and Wi-Fi at the same time. So if your Thread router does not provide an Ethernet uplink, it will keep on Wi-Fi, and you can run Meta over Thread with, I don't know, Apple Home, and you can run an MQTT connection into Home Assistant, all in parallel.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's really cool.
That's how we think it should be. The customer should have the choice. We want to give you
I
the
agree.
choice, whatever you want to use, we give you the choice. And then, of course, for our own app, we try to make it as good as possible because that's one thing we have under control. But we also want to give you the chance that you with Home Assistant can develop whatever and that we have an integration there. So we made an MQTT API into the lock next to Matter and Thread because we think that, or we know that we can provide more features there that Meta doesn't have yet. And Home Assistant is the only platform that can run everything. So you can set it up with Meta via Thread with Home Assistant, but you can also on top put our MQTT connection into Home Assistant and do a little bit more of the fancy things that are not supported by Meta at the time.
How have you gone about? Because obviously, being a retrofit lock, there are so many different lock styles. I mean, I'm sure there's just a few in Europe alone. You're now going into the US, where you're targeting. All right, let's go over to the US now. How how many doors, how many different types of locks do you scour in your research to go? Okay, we can cover. We know that this design will cover off X amount percentage of doors. Like, have you had to have a thought about? Okay, we want to be able to support a lock that can only do 30-degree turns, make it customizable. The user needs to say, this is where the lock is, this is where unlock is. Like, how is that design process? How do you go through that?
Well, you look on the market and you see what you can cover, also what others are covering. And we found the area of these single deadbolt locks, which are quite prominent over there, and that's what we are focusing on. On those, it works. Of course, if you also have a European style mortise lock, you would probably be able to use one of our European versions over there. But the main version for the US is actually the one that fits on the single-sided deadbolt, and that covers quite a lot. And for us, it's a starting point. We want to see if people in the US like our products like they do over here in Europe. And
Mhm.
once you find out that you get some grip over there and how it works, we can still expand and look at new categories.
Another thing that's happened, I guess, just last few months, you're just launching in the US now. Have you found with the tariffs, you're proudly made in Europe. You've got the quality, or everywhere it's made in Europe. Have you found any issues now trying to launch in the US, being a European brand going into the US?
It's mostly, for the time being, it's mostly the insecurity because we
Hmm.
haven't paid any tariffs yet. So everything we shipped there was without tariff, but
Great.
no one knows what's going to happen in a month. And
Yeah.
that's
Right.
the problem. Well, then of course, once there are tariffs, you have a problem to deal with in a way, and you need to think whether you put this on top of your pricing or you can swallow it alone. But that depends on the tariff that you have to pay when it's time and you don't know that yet.
Yeah.
It's completely, it might get pushed back, or tomorrow something might be different. Nobody knows. And that's actually
Yeah.
the biggest problem. You don't want to build a business on unsecurity.
Yeah. Are you
But
are you still for the US, do you still ship from
we ship from
Europe or
Europe.
from Austria?
Yes.
Yeah.
We build everything in Europe, and then we ship
Yeah.
from Austria. And of course, we have to pay the tariff that is valid at the time of shipment. And what it will
Yep.
be, we don't know, can change anytime. It can be pushed back.
Yeah.
Of course, we hope that there is no specific tariff on top and that we can just sell at the rates we plan to sell over there. Huh?
Yeah, because even recently at the time of recording, I think Apple iPhones were all of a sudden stopped from being interested. So there's it's changing all the time. So I guess it does. Yeah, it's so uncertain at the moment.
Yep.
But good that it's made in Europe. Because generally everything I know I had would have been a random Kickstarter Smart Lock 2 when I was renting. That took ages to come out, and it was made in China, cloud based. I think there's a Wi-Fi module, but it didn't integrate well. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool that it's not. There's more options, right, to choose from.
Yes. So we built our hardware here in Europe. We have our servers here in Europe, and everything is GDPR compliant and so on. Plus, we have the strong belief that in data that you do not have to hand over to anyone, it can also not get lost. So we try to collect as little data as needed from you. We try to have as little in the cloud as needed. And it should also be in your hands. So you can use our logs via Bluetooth. In this case, nothing is in the cloud, because when you set up the log, a pair of keys is locally created. It's stored in your app, it's stored in the log, and it's used to encrypt the communication. Then it's end-to-end encrypted. We also offer remote access. So if you connect the log to Wi-Fi, it uses remote access through our servers. But everything is end-to-end encrypted with the keys that have been created before. So we cannot read anything on cloud side, which means, again, it's local basically. It uses the cloud as a bridge because you have firewalls and NAT and whatever stuff behind, but it doesn't encrypt. So we have no information on server side what's going on. We are just passing along. We're just providing infrastructure. And then, of course, we also offer cloud APIs or a web service or integrations into Airbnb and stuff like that. For this, of course, we need more on our cloud side. And if you turn on those things, then something is in our cloud. But it's under your control. You don't have to, you can. It's the same with if you just use it locally in the Nuki app and integrate it into Home Assistant, it doesn't need an internet connection for that, the log. It would like to have one because it would like to download firmware updates and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
you don't need. You can also isolate it if you want to.
Yeah. If you don't ever want to do the updates or anything, you don't ever have to, right? And there's no fear of, you guys pushing down an update to brick a lock or something like that, right? That's the other side of it too, right? Because again, we always use Logitech as an example, right? Where they push down firmware to say, okay, well, no more and brick, right? Or on the counter side, not offer firmware,
Yeah. Well,
which
also here we give the option. So we have automatic firmware
yeah,
update. If the lock has an internet connection, you can turn it off. Then it's under your control.
yeah, that's awesome. I really like the whole privacy aspect that you guys have taken behind it, because there's no reason you need to know what time I'm opening my lock or like locking or unlocking, or the fact that I forget to lock my door at every day or whatever, right? Whatever those habits might be. There's no reason to know and or sell or whatever
Yeah, it's
people do
also
with that
from a
data.
security point of view. If there are no keys on our servers, they cannot get
Yeah.
stolen. So,
Yep.
that makes the
That's it.
system, of course, to a certain degree secure. Plus, it's also in terms of privacy. If we don't have your account, we don't need your email and your name. Why?
Yeah.
We don't have
Yeah.
it. You can, of course, sign up for Nuki Club and you can receive some emails and promos, whatever, but you don't have to. If you want,
Sure.
you can just use it locally. The log wants to have a name because you want to see in the app how it is named. The log also
Yep.
wants to have a username for you so that it can write down the activity log who you are. but those things stay locally. They don't move into the cloud. They are not somewhere on our
Yeah,
servers. Huh? That's the
that's
philosophy
beautiful.
behind. You can, but you don't have to.
Love that. That's great.
We'll be back with Jürgen in a sec. But if you're looking to upgrade your smart home, you can't go past Zeus. Add Z-Wave long range to your home assistant setup with the Zeus ZST39 USB radio. Their advanced technology operates in dual network mode, combining a reliable mesh system with ultra-fast direct device-to-hub connectivity. And with Z-Wave long range support, you can get coverage up to 1,300 feet or 400 meters, both indoors and outdoors. And it's extremely secure with unique DSK QR code scanning, which you can now do directly within Home Assistant. The Z-Wave JS integration in Home Assistant enables seamless compatibility with a range of brands, all working together through this secure, private, and standardized off-cloud protocol. But that's just the start. Zeus offer a range of affordable and innovative devices, including water leak sensors, water valve controllers, smart plugs, scene controllers, and even color paddles. The color paddles for their scene controllers, dimmers, and switches allow the smart devices to blend seamlessly into your home. For the best prices on all Zeus products, head over to thesmartesthouse.com. That's thesmartesthouse.com. Switching gears a little bit, now, was a lock your first foray into a smart home? Like, was the lock, your first device that you put on and go, okay, now I can do some other things in the home? Or had you already been in, home automation and smart home before that?
Actually, before we as a company started with logs, and because I started in the beginning with I had keys. I didn't want to carry
Nice.
around the key.
Yeah.
Before that, I personally I had my private experiences with smart home, of course, but from a professional point of view, no, because we've never made hardware before. We've been a software company before. I personally have been in charge of one of the largest websites, or even the largest website in Austria, around 2000s. It was a website that was popular for sending text messages from the internet to mobile phones. And it also
Mhm.
became eventually the biggest social network in Austria at that time. So that was the time of MySpace, and we had also very MySpace-like network. But
Nice.
that's where we are coming from. We are coming from direct to consumer, from running large websites and stuff like that. We didn't have experience with hardware at the time, and that was a very interesting journey to learn hardware and how it works. But we knew for this use case, we need hardware as an enabler.
So what did that look like? What was that process for you, like you and the team, to kind of retool yourselves to become hardware people on top of software people?
Well, if you are clever, you try to partner up with someone who already knows how hardware works, and that's what we did. So we searched for a shareholder in the company that could also bring in some of this knowledge. And when we designed the first smart lock, we tried to use external companies, and then we internalized more and more of that know-how. But we're still working with external companies for some aspects. So, for example, the design of our products, it comes from a company that also the Bill Gates Foundation works with. It's a Vienna-based design studio, and we work with them since the beginning because we also believe that what you put on your door also needs to look cool because it's your door. You walk by it and past it every day, and it also needs to fit, and you need to like it. That's why we put a lot of emphasis on the design side of things. And yeah, that's how we do it. We try to work with partners where we don't have the know-how, with good ones, and internalize the core knowledge that we need on day-to-day basis.
That's cool, and I like that you guys went to a design firm. I've seen, things designed by proper engineers, and not every time, but let's say 9 out of 10 times they end up really ugly, right? Because engineers design for engineering purposes, and they're like, "Yeah, this works. Who cares how good it looks," right? But no, that truly does look really nice. So I'm glad you guys had the forethought to say, "Hey, let's actually work with someone whose primary focus is design." Now, when that happens, and this whole thing is complete, this part's completely foreign to me, right? When you work with a design firm and do all that, eh, do they like give you something completely unrealistic where you're like, okay, well, I can't fit my hardware into there, and do you iterate on that, or is it kind of more, I assume it's collaborative, but at the same time, is it more like, "Hey, I have all of this stuff and here you go. You guys figure out the design." How does that look? Like, what does that, feel like?
Yeah, it's a funny combination because typically we know what we know the use case. We know how the consumer wants to interact with our device. So say if we
Yeah,
design, I don't know, a lock, we know that there needs to be a button. So some things are fixed, right? And with these few things that are fixed, we typically start very early into the design process. So before we do any drawings of our products, we already start with the design process. So it comes in very
sure.
early. And then they typically come with quite radical ideas, which are not doable. We always start with something that is not possible. And most of the time, it's about size. We try to be minimalistic, small, um, probably include things that are too expensive, and then you need to work through it. So is this doable or is it not? Yeah? How much space do we need in order to fit all the antennas and the PCB in there? How many batteries is something we typically already have defined up front because that defines a lot of the size constraints. But in terms of shape and form, we're relatively open. And then you run through this process, and it's really super interesting because by the time you get to learn a little bit of their tricks, and it makes such a big difference if you have, I don't know, let's take the keypad here. When you take this, there is a small gap here. And then what does this small thing do? There are sometimes things where such a small thing makes the whole product look completely different. Or if you look at the lock here, this, on front, there is a small radius on it. Here, you can see. This radius makes the whole product appear completely different. It looks much smaller than it would look if it were the other way around. And and that's so funny because there are tricks you can do that have an influence. Or for example, there is this black ring, right? Here. There is stainless steel here, then the knob you can turn, and then there is the black ring. If you would make this also stainless steel, it would look much different. And those are small things that we talk all the time. Do we need a small thing here or something there or a little bit of a radius there? And that makes a lot of difference. And that's so funny when you work through the process, that small things make a huge difference in our eyes. So add one
Yeah,
millimeter here and it looks like, boom, boom, this is much too big. Remove 1 millimeter
yeah.
and it feels, oh, it's cool. It's really, the devil is in the detail.
It's like optical illusions, and you're trying to trick people into,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly,
thinking.
exactly, exactly. And the funny thing is that most of these illusions work the same for everyone. So if you show it to people, everyone has the same feeling that this object
Hmm.
now, the proportions of this object do not fit. Then you change 1 millimeter here, and suddenly for everyone it fits. And it's crazy. How does that work? It's just 1 millimeter difference. How? Yeah, but that's
That's
how it works,
funny.
and that's the interesting thing during the design process.
That's really cool.
That's fascinating. Like, yeah, to think that there's just these little edges or little things that you can cut out and
Uh,
change just subtly, and it makes just that big difference. That's
Yeah, and
very
then you
cool.
also know, that's the interesting thing because when you have the design and you know that if you would need to add 1 millimeter here because you don't fit your PCB or whatever into it, then actually the shape breaks. So you know what are the important elements that you need to focus on to get right in order for it to look cool. And
Yeah.
that's always been the fascinating thing out of this design process for me because you never know where those boundaries are. For every
Yeah.
object or every product you design, they are different. But
Wow.
everyone feels the same. That's the cool thing. That's also when you produce something that looks cool and clean, when people see this object, everyone says, hey, it looks modern, cool, reduced. It's funny. Because most people have the same sentiment.
Yeah. Yeah. Even before we started recording, when you quickly showed us the Nuki lock, I was like, "Oh, that actually looks pretty small." Because what and I've ranted about this a few times, but my door has, like, the window is too close to the lock, right? So that means that I can only fit very certain
Mm.
frame sizes within the lock, and the first thing I thought was like, "Oh, that might actually fit on my door," which is kinda cool, right?
Yeah.
Which is I can't say for a lot of different things now. Again, is that an optical illusion? I don't know, but no, it it looks like it's genuinely, small, right? Which is nice.
So Jürgen, has working with the Home Assistant works with program made you start using Home Assistant yet, or want to go down the Home Assistant rabbit hole at all?
You mean for myself?
Yeah,
Yeah, for
you
yourself.
personally.
Well, my smart home, as I said, I started already out before Nuki was there, and it was also before Home Assistant was there. Because I always followed the evolution of the different platforms, and Home Assistant definitely was the rising star over the last 10 years. Out of all the platforms that were there in, say, 10 years ago, it made definitely the biggest step of all the platforms that are kind of open source, Linux based,
Mm.
allow you to play around. That's why I always hated that I have not started out with Home Assistant in the first place. Because
Yeah.
the stupid thing is when you have your smart home set up to a certain degree, it's always a hurdle to move over.
Yes. Yep.
And
Yeah, for sure.
I have for my own home, I have some philosophies that I adhered. And one of those philosophies is that I want to make automations, and because they're named automations, they should run automatically.
Yes.
Yep.
So I tried to make my smart home help me automatically without. So my smart home is not just an interface. I didn't replace my light switches with
Mhm.
intelligent light switches if the light switch just turns on and off the light, because for that I don't need intelligence. You know?
Right.
I have replaced light switches in some rooms, so hallways, with just stupid movement sensors. Because when you walk through the room, it turns on the light. After 2 minutes, it's off. Okay, thanks. I don't need more intelligence for that. Uh, I don't need fancy blue, yellow, whatever lights in my hallway. It's always the same. It just needs to turn on and turn off again. Automatic. That's what it does. I don't need even a smart home system for that. It could be any stupid, movement sensor that turns it on for 2 minutes. So good to go with this. Go with it. And many of the automations I have built are based on this principle. So they don't really have a user interface. You are the user interface with your presence, basically, but they automatize something on top. And then for those things, it's hard to switch platforms because you don't have an additional gain. If it works already right now, what do I get from a new platform?
Yeah.
And
That
I
that is
also had,
100% true.
yeah, and one of the most interesting or very interesting things of Home Assistant is that, well, it has a very broad range of things to integrate. You can integrate almost everything, but you also get the logging side of it. So you have pretty graphs and all of that. Stupidly, for my system, I already had set up a Grafana and all of that. So I already have all the graphs, which would mean I would need to rebuild the graphs again. So
Yes.
that's why I'm always hesitate to, should I really move over? It's a lot of effort because all the automations you need to reprogram and build on a new platform. And at the very end, I end up best case with the same thing. So
Yep.
that's why I didn't move.
Yeah.
Then one thing I did is I tried to use, because one aspect of Home Assistant is also the front end. So you can use it just as a universal front end for everything.
Yeah.
I tried that first because most of the people in my home are iOS users. So I tried to use Apple Home for it. So I used Homebridge and basically brought through Homebridge my smart home
Yeah.
into Apple Home, basically. Then I
Mm.
gave my family the front end and found out that they don't use it.
As you just said, like presence is enough, right? Like,
Exactly. If everything is set up to work automatically and you have presence and you have switches here and there for some automations, you don't need it. That's why they didn't use it. That's why it basically died off. So even when Homebridge stopped working for whatever reason, no one complained. So I said, okay, why do I maintain this? Huh?
yep.
So Also,
Yeah.
the front end aspect isn't there, and that's the main reason why I haven't switched to Home Assistant myself. I set it up several times. I also have an instance running, and my lock is connected to it. But actually, I don't do anything with it because I would need to move over all the automations and everything, and yeah, that was just too much.
And for what benefit, right? Like, because no one's going to notice. The lights are still going to turn on when you walk into a room. Yeah, I'm guessing the climate's gonna be controlled at the same way. Like, you're absolutely right in that if presence enough, like, if you're not using it as an interface, there is little benefit to moving. And I would feel the same. Like, I do use Home Assistant, but even if something the bee's knees was to come out, like, what would be the benefit in moving? I'd have to move all those automations over. No one else in the home except for me uses the interface. And even then, it's just to control, things that aren't automated. So yeah,
Yeah.
I totally get that.
But in terms of things you can do, I also noticed that Home Assistant went a lot in the direction of energy saving. That has
It has,
been
yeah.
that has been my first foray. So I didn't build my house. I purchased it, so I can only retrofit. And of course, first thing I did was put solar panels on the roof, so that you put a battery in the cellar, so you have your own power. You can use, of course, when you have too much power, you try to charge your car. You switch on some plugs here and there that, I don't know, the pump of the pool is connected to the solar. When there is enough energy, you run the pump. If it's raining, you run the pump less or not at all. And those automations, they are all set up. No one uses them, but they're very useful because actually they just work. They make you save money on the energy bill. They're good for the environment because I use my own energy and not the one that comes out of the grid. It just feels good when things run on your own, and that's been the philosophy. And in terms of user interface, as much as we can do with presence, the better it is. I'm a fan of that, and that's for my private home, but it's also for Nuki because I think what's the ideal door lock? The ideal door lock actually unlocks when you want to walk through. It automatically recognizes it's you. It says, okay, I know Jürgen. Jürgen is secure. He can go through. I just disappear. The ideal door is like a door on Star Trek, right? It knows when you want to walk through, it disappears and closes after you. This is the ideal
Yeah.
door. And this is the direction I want to drive Nuki. We should offer you the ability to have the ideal door. Then, how
Yeah.
close are we? Well, for some things, it will take some time because we cannot make the door disappear, right? You still have to
Not yet.
put
Yeah.
a handle and open and lock. Maybe in the future we can make it disappear. I don't know, but
Yeah.
maybe in the future this is a way. Currently, we can just retrofit on an existing one. Then, of course, for presence, we sometimes need helpers, so we need to take our phones as saying, okay, there's presence. We can use our fingers, so we have some biometrics. We might also see Face ID or other things coming up, but I believe strongly in that. Ideally, it just works, and you don't need to
Yeah.
think, and you don't need any tools for it to work. So the ideal door,
Yeah.
it just unlocks and locks, and you don't have to think about it.
The door is literally getting out of your way.
Exactly. And the important thing is you don't have to think. I shouldn't have to think about carrying keys. I shouldn't have to think about locking it, unlocking it. It should just work.
Yep.
Just do it. Yeah. You shouldn't know that it even exists, right? Like that the lock exists.
That's the ideal scenario. When you drive away from home, you shouldn't think about whether I lock the door or not. It should just out of your brain. It's
Yeah.
always locked
Yeah.
when I go. So I have trust into the system. It works. I don't need to think. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
But that's the journey that fascinates me, and that's why I'm still doing this after 10 years, because I would have never thought we can spend 10 years on just locking and unlocking doors.
Now,
That's fair.
in one some of the things that we saw, Phil and I were at CES in January this year, and some of the things that we saw there were people with locks that had like I don't know, like five, six, eight different ways of opening them. Right? There's number pads, there's facial, there's fingerprint, there's I don't even
Palm
know what
prints.
else. Right? Palm prints. Yeah. So like, what do you think are in your opinion, what do you think are effective and ineffective ways of locking and unlocking your door, both from a practicality perspective, but also from a security perspective?
Mm. Well, it's always I would always start from the use case, and the use case is that I want to go through my door or unlock my door as effortless as possible. So that starts already with a device. If it's a device I carry with me, and if it has a way already right now to detect it's me, I should be able to use it. So for example, in phones, typically this phone, it has Bluetooth, NFC, ultra-wideband, whatever stuff built in. We should make use of this. That was very easy in the old days because in the old days they just had Bluetooth, and Apple and Google and all of them, they opened up Bluetooth pretty wide, so you could do everything with Bluetooth. Once they discovered that there is money behind, they started to lock it down. So NFC is locked down, ultra-wideband is locked down, everything is locked down, which is a pity because we carry stuff around that we just can't use. So now those things are opening up and they are creating some APIs that you can access it, and that's mainly the NFC and ultra-wideband portion that is bundled into Aliro, and that's coming. And that's an interesting thing because it's using a technology I carry around. And I would say the same is for biometrics. You carry them around, but the usefulness is defined by, well, of course, the security, but also what do I have to do in front of the door? Imagine you would have a voice
Yeah,
assistant in front of the door with whom you speak. Is that something people like? I guess no, because when you stand in
yeah,
the hallway and start to speak with your door, it's too slow. As soon as I
mm,
start to say the sentence, I'm already too slow. So it
yeah,
needs to
Yep.
fulfill the promise that you can effortlessly walk through. If it takes 5 seconds for authenticating you, lost. If it
yeah,
takes 5 seconds to raise your hand and wave somewhere around, forget it. Yeah.
yeah,
If face detection is nice, but if face detection takes five seconds to detect, it's too slow. So those things need to fit together in order to serve the use case. And what worked pretty well in the past is fingerprint because it's cheap, it works in battery-driven devices, it's relatively quick. That's a good thing. I think Face ID also has a good future, and everything that is in devices that we already carry around. So I think if you carry a watch and the watch is NFC, it should just naturally be an option for you to use NFC because
yeah,
you have it already with you. Why not?
Mm.
Huh?
yeah.
Then of
Why not?
course,
Yeah,
if this thing is on your door and you need to fiddle around to get your watch there, it's not handy.
yeah,
Yeah. So maybe for some
yeah.
use case it's lost because it's just too complicated to get there.
Or if you're holding bags of groceries and stuff like that, heavy things, and it's hard to tap on the
Exactly, exactly. So those are things that are going to hinder the use case. Same as if you carry a
yeah,
cap in winter all the time and the Face ID doesn't work because of the cap or the glasses, it's a lost case. And what I also believe is there will be different options, also different options on use cases, but you need to back it up in a way so that consumers understand what it is. I'm, there are some companies out there that try to offer you as many possible options in just one product.
yeah,
Most certainly, you have a trade-off. It's either too
yeah.
complex to set up, or it doesn't work properly, or whatever. I'm more a fan of have the things in there that matter most and make them good, rather than trying to have everything in there and creating a mess that nobody understands.
Yeah, and that's what I found with a couple of the devices that we saw, and it's like it's almost too much in there,
Mm.
right? And it's like there's so many ways of utilizing this thing, and it's I don't know, it's almost overwhelming, right? Even for a person setting it up, like for
Yes.
me to like we talked about the protocols, right? That's fine because again, I can set it up one way or the other, and then I don't have to think about the rest. But here, it's like okay, if I turn on every single feature, great. Then what is it that I'm going to use to? Because this, again, the protocol is one time set up and it's done. I don't care if it uses
Mm.
Wi Fi, Matter, or whatever after that point. But when I'm interacting with the device and I have a decision to make of which one of these 6 different ways do I want to open it every time I open it, right? That's a bit of a
No, you don't need that many options. So for our product, for example, it's very easy. If you have the Nuki app and you turn on auto unlock, it will typically auto unlock before you are already at the door. If that doesn't work for whatever reason and you use the fingerprint as a failover, you're super happy and everything is done. So if you have your phone with you, it will automatically unlock. If the phone isn't there, you just put the finger there and you're good to go. That's a very, you don't need much more than that. For many consumers, that's already enough. So why have 3 million different options that just confuse people when this is a very good combination to work with?
I agree. I agree. And you have your fail-safe there, and you have your like, yeah, and you have, I mean, like what you showed, the keypad too,
Yeah, and
right?
then
As an
when you
absolute fallback.
Yeah, and the same is when you walk away and you want to lock. Either you double press on the device or you press the back key here and then it locks and you basically close the door, press the back key and you walk off and this is it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It's that's why even my current door lock, it's I actually hate it, but it's good in the sense that I can same thing. I close the door, I press the lock button, and I just will leave, right? And it's a keypad one, right? The one built in, whatever, but it's I don't know, it's simple enough, right? And it's even when my wife comes in, whatever, she loves using it. I'd love if it had a proximity feature, right? Where it's like I walk up to it and it unlocks or whatever, but you win some, you lose. But,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Why make things complex when there is also an easy way?
that's it, that's it. Perfect, Jürgen, where can people find you? Where can people find Nuki? We'd love to make sure our listeners connect with you guys.
Yeah, Nuki.io is our website. Just go on it, look at our products. We're available in mainly Europe, of course, but also in the US and in some other countries. We have integrations, so you can also find out somewhere in the Home Assistant forums, and you can search around if you're interested for other people who have integrated Nuki somewhere. You can also contribute there. We have a developer forum where you can search for stuff. You can also ask for changes. You can bring in feature requests, so you can actively try to participate if you want to. And you can also sign up to beta programs, download beta firmware there, actively contribute with your setup to making Nuki better. We are happy to have that. And then, of course, we like everyone to share positive experiences with our product if he is happy with it. Because that's what,
Yep.
in the end, what I'm motivated in is helping other people to get rid of those crazy keys that we all carry around.
Yeah.
And the more people know that such products exist, the better it is. Because honestly, many people out there still don't know that smart locks exist and that they are so easy to
Yeah.
mount. That many
Mm.
people think you have to study something in order to mount a smart lock. No, you don't have to. You can just
Yeah.
get one. You can retrofit it. You can use our app. You can later on have a smart home where you integrate. You don't need one. It's simple. It's a really simple thing.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, Jürgen, anything else to add? Anything you wanna finish with beyond there?
Well, maybe congrats over to you at Home Assistant. I think Home Assistant really, I said it already before, it evolved as a rising star from all of the different initiatives that I followed during the last 10 years, and it still does. For us, it's always been very nice to work with you guys. Whenever we had a new feature in Matter or wherever it first showed up in Home Assistant, when we wanted to have a front-end implementation the way done, we think it makes sense. We worked together with you on it, you built it, and we were able to show others actually how you have done it. So you are a role model. Continue with that. I think it's very helpful and it's very important that we have such initiative, that there are not just the big ones who are building smart homes, that you are there, that you are offering an open platform that can also work locally but remotely and make smart homes easier for consumers. I think it's very important to have this.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
the whole better together, everyone rises, right? Like we all help each other rise up. I
Yes.
think that's, yeah, where the Home Assistant project has done really well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
Perfect. Jürgen, thank you so much for joining us today. This has actually been really insightful for me, at least. I learned a lot about the process and everything too. And but yeah, thank you and cheers. Hope to see you soon.
My
Yes.
pleasure. Have a nice day.
Likewise.